In this video, we are going to be doing lesson 12.2, the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, make sure you have the objective written down. I will use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of the hypotenuse in a right triangle. Okay, and I'll be explaining what the Pythagorean theorem and the hypotenuse of a right triangle is. All right, our essential question is, what is the Pythagorean theorem and how can you use it to find the missing hypotenuse lengths in a right triangle? Okay, whenever we're talking about the Pythagorean theorem, we're talking about, you can use the Pythagorean theorem when you're dealing with right triangles. Okay, specifically right triangles. It can't just be any triangle, it has to be a right triangle. All right, so here we have a right triangle over here. When you have a right triangle, the different sides are called different things. The two sides, see our right angle right there? That little box thing means a right angle. The two sides that are next to the right angle, like they're touching the right angle, are called legs. We have a leg. This side is called a leg. And this side of the triangle, the right triangle, is called a leg. So the key concept right here, one of the things we're talking about is we have to write down that this is only involving right triangles when we can use the Pythagorean theorem. And the legs in the right triangle are the two shortest sides. And they are next to the right angle. Okay, and again, over here you can see that these two sides are the two shortest sides and they're next to the right angle. They're touching the right angle, these two sides of the triangle. The other side, this side that's opposite the right angle, it's not touching the right angle, it's opposite, and it's also the longest side of the triangle, is called a hypotenuse. All right, it's opposite the right angle, and it's the longest side of the triangle. So let's write that down, that the hypotenuse in a right triangle is always opposite the right angle and it's the longest side. Okay, and when we're talking about the Pythagorean theorem is a formula to help you find it's called the Pythagorean theorem. It's a formula to help you find the missing length of one of the sides of a right triangle. And in this case today, if you look back at our objective, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem, which I'm going to tell you the formula in a second, to find the length of the hypotenuse in the right triangle. So this is going to be the missing length today in our triangles. It's going to be the hypotenuse side. So the Pythagorean theorem, the formula is called a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right, and we always label the two legs are going to be A is one leg, B is your other leg. Okay, if you wanted to label this one A, this leg A, and this leg B, that's fine. The A and the B are interchangeable. They just have to represent the legs, the lengths of the legs. The hypotenuse side always has to be C. Okay, the hypotenuse can never be A or B, it has to be C. So basically what that's saying, if you have A squared, the length of this side, A squared plus B squared, the length of B, equals C squared. Okay, in any right triangle, the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs, right, A squared plus B squared, is always equal to the square of the length of a hypotenuse. All right, so let's apply that to example number 1. All right, we had to have that pre-knowledge to be able to do our examples. So here it's asking us, example number 1, what is the length of the diagonal of the triangle below? Okay, Well, first we have to figure out, well, we know that the diagonal, right, of this rectangle, that's the diagonal. Okay, it splits up the two triangles in the rectangle here. So then we have to find, remember the Pythagorean theorem always has to deal with right triangles. So we have to find the right triangle in this picture. Here it is right here. So highlight that. This is our right triangle. Okay. And we know that the legs, here's a leg right there. The leg, this side of the triangle is 15 feet. Here's our other leg, right? Because the two legs have to touch the right angle. They're the shortest sides and they're next to the right angle. So this is another leg in our triangle that we highlighted. And so this side right there, the length of this side of the triangle, this is your hypotenuse. Because it's opposite the right angle, right? It's not touching the right angle, and it seems to be the longest side there. Okay, we don't know the length of the hypotenuse. We have to figure out the length of it because the hypotenuse is the diagonal. We have to find the length of the diagonal. All right, so now let's label. This leg can be A, this leg can be B, and then C is always your hypotenuse. Because we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. Right, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It's a formula, you want to memorize it. We're going to use that formula to find the missing length of this side of the triangle. We know that this side of the triangle is 15 feet and this one's 20 feet, but we don't know the length of this side. We're going to be able to figure it out by using the Pythagorean theorem. So here's where we apply the Pythagorean theorem. We have a squared, so we have to look, well, where's my a that I labeled? A has to be a leg. So a is 15. So it's 15 squared, because it's a squared, plus b squared. Let's see, my other leg is b right here, so it's 20 squared, because the length of b here is 20. And then equals c squared. We don't know what c is. We're trying to figure that out, the length of the diagonal, which in this case, the hypotenuse. All right, so now let's further evaluate it. Well, what is 15 squared? What does that mean? It means 15 times 15. Okay, so if you were to multiply that out, it's 225. So 225 plus, then we have 20 squared, which is what? 20 times 20, right? Which is 400 when you multiply that out. So we have 225 because that's what 15 squared is, plus 20 squared is 400 equals c squared. We're solving for c here. We have to get c by itself. All right, so let's further solve this. We have these two terms are whole numbers, so let's add them together. We can combine them. What's 625? I'm sorry, what's 225 plus 425? 400. Sorry, guys. 225 plus 400 is, I already said the answer, 625. And it equals c squared. All right, we still don't have c by itself, but we know that c is squared. Remember, the opposite of a square is a square root. So to undo this square, you have to take the square root to cancel it out. Whatever you do the one side, you'd have to do the other side. All right, now we have the square root of 625. Okay, if we don't know what that is, we can use our calculator. All right, we would press the square root button. See my square root button of 625. And then the equal sign. It equals 25. So when you take the square root of 625, it equals 25. Equals, and then over here we have c. Look, we just solved for c. What did that just tell me? That just told me that the hypotenuse up here is 25. And in this case, if you look at the units, we're talking about feet. So it's 25 feet. All right, we use the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, to solve for c here, our hypotenuse. We took the lengths, we plugged in a is 15, so it's a squared, 15 squared, plus b, which we said is 20, b squared equals c squared. Okay, then we had to further evaluate it. So the length of diagonal, we just figured out. The length of the diagonal is 25 feet. Okay, now I want you to try the got it number 1 and then watch the video to make sure that you understood it.